Let's talk about irradiance probes. What are they and how do we use them? This scene, as we can see, has no irradiance probes in it. We're going to add one. Shift A, move down to light probe, and we'll put a radiance volume in there. And now we've added it, and I'm going to hit the S key. I'm going to scale it up. And what I want to make sure is that I'm not scaling it so that it's going to actually enter into the wall. We want these little dots, each one of these dots, to be in a clear area inside the volume. Right now, they're not showing anything. And as we talked about before, we have a blue wall here and a red wall here. And as you can see, this cube, this white cube, is not showing any of the deflected light from the blue wall or the red wall. But if we go into our scene setup in the indirect lighting and we bake indirect lighting, see that now we're getting deflected light. We're getting a little blue in the shadow here, a little red in the shadow over here. So these lights can be thought of as little light meters. In fact, let's go ahead and turn them on. This little eyeball, we turn that on and we can see each one of these lights is showing what light they are capturing. It's red on this side and there's blue on this side. So each one of these capture the light, and then Eevee will use that information to light the objects in the scene. Now, I'm going to turn this off, and let's notice on this irradiance volume, the density of the volume. If we look down from the top, we have a 4x4 grid, and from the side, from the front and the side, it's 4x4, you can see. And this is a pretty good density for this particular room. One thing we may notice is the bottom of this sphere, this reflection, is kind of dark and it doesn't really look right. So let's think more about what these irradiance probes do. As we mentioned, they capture the light. When they capture the light, they then become light emitters themselves. So what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to take this object and I'm going to hide it. I'm going to take this cube. I'm going to hide it also, and I'm going to come back here and free the lighting cache, and then I'm going to bake it again, and it basically recreated the lighting inside this room as well as it recalculated the reflection cube map. If we want to, we can go into the cube map and we can click on it and we can move the size up, and you'll see exactly that's what the cube map looks like. Keep in mind, just like the irradiance, when we turn these up, they will tell us the size of it, and if we free the lighting cache, those all go away. So we'll put it back on. So if you don't see those, it's because you haven't baked the indirect lighting. So now that that's done, I'm going to turn these off. I'm going to go back in and understanding that it calculated the reflections and it calculated the lighting without our cube and our sphere in the scene. So I'm going to turn these back on. Now what happens? Well, very interesting. It actually did use the reflection map and it used the lighting from the probes to light this cube below. Now it's not perfect and it's not great, but it does show that those irradiance probes can light objects that aren't there when it's originally calculated. And we're going to use this later to our advantage as we're trying to speed up some baking of scenes. One other thing I'll mention is that at this point, we can say bake the cube map only. And when we do that, notice how we get a much nicer reflection on the bottom of it because that cube map was baked again. We kept the same lighting and now we have a better reflection. So that's one reason that you might want to use the bake cube map only button. This is a room that's an L configuration. It's got our main cube area and then it's got a hallway back here and a couple pedestals and a mirrored ball. We have gone ahead and we've turned off screen face reflection. You can see we turn them back on. We'll turn them off because we'll adjust the lighting for now. Let's free the lighting cache. And you can see when we free the lighting cache, there's absolutely no reflected light. If we just bake the cube map only because we don't have any irradiance volumes in here, we'll see that we're going to get a little bit of red in here and a little bit of blue in here. And that's because these surfaces have a little bit of specularity to them. And because of that, they're going to actually reflect light, right? As opposed to in this particular case, as we look, we will see we're going to want to add an irradiance volume to this main area, and then we're going to want to extend it into the back. Go ahead and do that real quick. Light probe, irradiance volume. Okay, and we'll just scale that up. Something that we think is going to work. Okay, and I'm going to deselect it. I'm going to free the lighting cache, and I'm going to bake the indirect lighting. And now we can see that we have a well-lit interior, except for in the back, it drops off quite a bit because we don't have an irradiance volume back there. Let's go ahead and we're going to turn on this so we can see these little dots. We can see what's being captured, and you notice they don't go all the way back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out, and I'll stretch it out something like this. I am going to go into the properties for the irradiance map and I'm going to adjust them to 8. And that's because that looks about a square. That might be right. I might even go 9. I'm adding a lot of dots in there. So if you notice, some of the dots are flat on the back wall, which that's not going to work. We know that that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to stretch this in just, and you'll also notice some of the dots are on the outside, which usually is not a good idea. But because the only light in the scene is coming from the inside, that's going to work. The reason why we're not seeing these balls is because we haven't baked it yet. So let's clear it and then let's bake it again. There we go. And I'm going to hide these and hide that, and we'll look. And we can see that that pretty much does the trick. We have a pretty good bake at that point. Now, one thing to be aware of when we're doing this is the density of the map can create problems. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at this irradiance volume, and instead of 9, we're going to go, let's just pick a number like 8. And we'll clear, and we'll bake again. And now, look at this up here. So you're saying, well, maybe more dense is better, but not always so. If I take this and let's move it down to 6, let's clear, and let's bake again, not much better. We'll have to play with this number. So let's take it down even further to 5. Clear and bake. There you go. So 5 got it. A lot of times you'll find that the fewer irradiance collectors, these little dots that you have, the smoother your lighting is going to be. Now, another way to solve this problem would be to break it out into 2 sets of irradiance maps. Now, why would we do that? Well, let's take a look at our sun. I'm going to turn the sun on for this. In this particular case, we have a point light up here, and I'm going to move him over on this side to make it particularly bad. I'm going to go into the settings for the sun, make it yellow, clear our bake, and then we'll come in, and we're already starting to see we have light leaks all around. That's the yellow colors we're seeing in here. Now we'll bake it again, and I'm going to turn off our globes, and you're starting to see we've got some really bad light leaks around the back especially. The reason for that is because our irradiance volume is capturing the light up here. So it's actually creating more problems for us than if we hadn't baked any lighting at all. How do we solve this? Well, we solve this simply by adding another volume. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. It's off. We're going to actually, I'm going to just delete that, Shift A, light probe, and I'll put in a irradiance volume. And now I'm going to go into wireframe orthographic mode. I'm going to look at this so I can see what's going on. I want to turn off my reflection map, so I don't want to see that in my scene. I'm going to move this up, and then I'm going to Shift D, Y, and move this in so that it's going to take up about a similar amount of space. So if I select both of these dots, all these dots are about the same space apart. We'll start off with the default number of dots right now. Then I'll take this one, and I am going to, from top view, shrink him so that he is going to fit inside of here. So this is our other one. They're both pretty much lined up. They look like it's lined up. This line is lined up here. This line's on this wall. Now I just need to adjust the number. So that's going to be, instead of 4 in the X, it's going to be 2 in the X. There we have it. We'll turn this on. We'll clear our cache, and we will go ahead and bake again. So now this time when we bake, we're still getting that light leak, but we're not getting the problems that we saw before. And of course, there's lots of ways that we can deal with that light leak. One way would be just to thicken this object. So I'll add a modifier and solidify, and we can do something like this, and you'll see that that fixes our problem. I can obviously adjust this to thinner to where it just kicks in. So really just almost anything is going to solve our problem. Why is that? Because remember our settings for our light. Remember we changed these, the clip start to 0.01, the softness, bias, exponent, contact shadows, and then we went back in over here and we made sure that we were using the VSM, not the ESM. ESM we're going to see a little more artifacting, so we're going to use a VSM. So now we're in pretty good shape. So we've just gone over how to use irradiance maps in single or double, and using them to make sure that we map correctly and evenly an interior volume.